pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1831 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. This episode will be the last in a 5-part series about the history and operations of Air America. We've gone through the whole thing. I have been sharing some information from a book written by Alan Cates about Air America. He did a great job. In this series, we have gone through the whole thing about when it first got started back before World War II through the inspiration of none other than General Claire Chennault, the pride of Commerce, Texas. That led to what most Vietnam veterans know as Air America. As a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, on occasion, I had a few contacts with Air America aircraft. I was always fascinated with that organization. It's been an exciting pleasure to share with you the history of Air America. This episode is the end of the series I'm doing about the history and operations of Air America, but that's not the end of the story. The story is just beginning because the Air America personnel who are still surviving are attempting to obtain equity in federal pension benefits from good old Uncle Sugar. They have been unjustifiably denied their rights to the pensions that all other federal employees enjoy. They have been unjustly denied. I'm going to do my best to contribute to the effort to correct that wrong. I say it's only the beginning of that effort because in the next podcast episode, if the creeks don't rise too high, I will be talking with none other than Maureen Ebersol, who is the General Counsel for the Air America Association. This woman is very well versed on the situation. She has been their attorney for 10 years. She followed in the footsteps of her father, who also served as the General Counsel for the Air America. She is dedicated to righting the wrongs these Air America personnel are suffering. I am joining with her in that effort. So look out. If it wasn't for the COVID-19 virus situation, I'd be all over the country speaking on their behalf the same way I was when I spoke on behalf of the Blue Water Navy Vietnam veterans. Something about it. When you see something that's not right associated with Vietnam veterans, I cannot help but get involved in the efforts to correct the situations. That's the way I feel about what's going on with the Air America personnel right now. I'm going to share the last excerpt from Alan Cates' book about Air America. And as you can see, just from this small part I'm sharing with you, it is a tremendous book. Cates has done a lot of research to put all this down in a book. I encourage you to get a copy of his book, and it's quite easy to do. All you've got to do is go to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com, look up episode 1831. It is also on episode 1830 and others. There you will see a picture of Mr. Cates' book on the left that I highly recommend you get a copy of. It's quite easy to do. All you do is click on the Buy Now button just below the image of the book, and you can be reading it in seconds if you go the Kindle route. I went the hardback route because I like to hold the book as I read it and turn the page, make notes, dog-ear the pages. If you like Kindle, that's fine. Whatever route you take, get that book and read it, and I guarantee you'll stamp out lots of ignorance about Air America. And then you will see what a wonderful organization it was and You will learn more about all the good work they did there. I also encourage you to forget everything about Air America that was in Mel Gibson's movie titled Air America. That's all it was Hollywood pap. Very little truth to it at all. Without any further ado, let's look at the final portion of Alan Cate's book about Air America that I'm going to share with you, so that you will be prepared to hear what Maureen Ebersol has to say about the current situation involving Air America. This portion I'm going to share with you in this episode deals with the end of Air America. Before the murderous North Vietnamese took over and started re-educating them with bullets, they participated in the rescue of as many South Vietnamese as possible. That's primarily what they're going to be talking about in here. And it also ends up with a very accurate description of the situation. Let's take a look at it. Air America employees scattered in 1975. Some went to work in Iran, Indonesia, and Taiwan, and some just went home to the United States. A few went to Vietnam, where another tragedy was about to unfold. The work in Vietnam was more administrative than the work in Laos, which was more paramilitary, but that didn't mean hazards did not exist. Ground fire hits were not as prevalent in Vietnam, but they still happened, and due diligence and vigilance was required by Air America crews. Milk runs were rare in Laos, but frequent in Vietnam, and a milk run could change rapidly into a dangerous situation at a moment's notice. Navigational aids were available at various locations in South Vietnam, but that didn't help Air America because their aircraft were not equipped with navigational equipment. As a result, fatal and tragic accidents occurred that had nothing to do with the war, but may have been avoided had the equipment been installed. The work for Air America was accomplished through contracts with USAID, CORDS, and in 1973, the International Commission of Control and Supervision. The company was contracted, the employees were not. ICCS was a spin-off from the International Commission established in 1953. Their job was to control and supervise the 1954 Geneva Accords agreement that separated North and South Vietnam along the 17th parallel. Supposedly, ICCS had power, but the truth is they did not have any power. However, America was a superpower, and a complaint by the ICCS about America had greater impact publicly than a claim about North Vietnam. America was sensitive about adverse publicity and tried to adhere to the Geneva Accords, but it was faced with the reality that North Vietnam did not and would not and did not care what anyone thought about it. Thus, America continued with a covert and clandestine policy of publicly presenting Air America as a free enterprise operating in Vietnam under various contracts. The contracts provided a method to separate the work and bill the different customers, but just as in Laos, an aircraft or helicopter working on a USAID contract might be working for the CIA or a Special Forces unit in the Delta or Two Corps areas. Air America stayed or went wherever the President and the National Security Council told them and did not have the autonomy of a free enterprise. When all the free enterprise companies left Vietnam at the direction of their boards of directors, Air America remained by direct order of the President through the various chains of command that included the Departments of State and Defense. Military activity lessened after the 1973 peace accords were signed, but soon after that increased substantially. American troops were no longer present, however, and the fighting was between the North and South Vietnamese. South Vietnam was supposedly able to defend itself against North Vietnam after American troops departed, but province after province fell to the North Vietnamese in an orderly fashion. Just as in Laos, Air America became involved in evacuations of terrified people running from the encroaching North Vietnamese. And well terrified they should have been. The evacuations were chaotic and dangerous and required extreme patience and professionalism on the part of the Air America crews. In 1974, a shoulder-fired heat-seeking missile struck an Air America helicopter, killing everyone on board. Such missiles could not be detected by flight crews and could be anywhere at any time. They represented a new peril to an already dangerous place. A note here. When we were flying Cobra gunships in Vietnam during 1970 and 71, I would often ponder the thought of, why didn't the NVA have shoulder-fired heat-seeking missiles to shoot at us? Because we were effectively blowing them apart with our 2.75-inch folding fin aerial rockets that were World War II varieties. As I look back, I always thank the good Lord above that whatever the reason was that the opposing forces did not have shoulder-fired heat-seeking missiles while I was flying over there, I was grateful to the good Lord above. For that reason, I'm probably still walking around today. Unfortunately for those Air America crews flying in 1974, apparently shoulder-fired heat-seeking missiles were readily available to the opposing forces. Continuing with the story, Congress wanted out of the Vietnam War. The agreements made at the Paris peace talks were scrapped. Now listen closely. Here is the key. America won the war in 1972 militarily, but lost it politically because of Congress and inaccurate reporting by an anti-war press. That's the main point you should take out of this podcast episode. Maybe you should write it down. I'll read it one more time for you. America won the war in 1972 militarily, but lost it politically because of Congress and inaccurate reporting by an anti-war press. Remember that. Continuing. America could not use American troops in South Vietnam longer than 60 days, according to the agreement, which meant not at all because it takes longer than that to provide logistical assistance to a sizable contingent. Some American military advisors remained and performed heroic duty in the northern portion of South Vietnam with South Vietnamese Marines in a battle known as the Easter Offensive of 1972. I've got news for Mr. Cates. There were some Army aviation assets there during the Easter Offensive, and they accorded themselves quite well. Continuing. By 1975, it was evident to most people that South Vietnam was going to fall to the North Vietnamese. For some reason, the U.S. ambassador held on to hope that the inevitable was not going to happen. But in April, it did, and it was both tragic and disheartening. Air America personnel tried to prepare pickup points for key personnel to be evacuated and to secure fueling stations. The ambassador would not cooperate because he thought such preparations would excite the population and signal defeat to the North Vietnamese. I got news for the ambassador. Sometimes you've got to do what you've got to do. Apparently, he didn't subscribe to that idea. Continuing. Improvisation became the new standard, and Air America flight crews excelled. Of course, that's easy to understand because most of them were Americans, and that's what we do. Operation Frequent Wind came with a vengeance, and video clips showed picture after picture of Air America helicopters performing heroic duty hour after hour, but the news media ignored the blue and silver birds. Fixed-wing crews battled, screaming hordes of people trying to escape, and with broken hearts were forced to push women and children away because to do otherwise would mean overloading that would make the aircraft incapable of flying. The runway in Saigon became inoperable, and the fixed-wing aircraft crews made their last flight out to Bangkok depressed and weary. Only the helicopters remained, and fuel now was a major problem. Calculations had to be done to determine how long they could stay and how long it took to fly to American ships offshore. The Navy crews were never told who America was, which made matters worse and treated them as if they too were evacuees. Arriving on board the ships, the crews were met with cocked weapons. Pilots watched as their cabin doors were quickly removed and were told to ditch their helicopters in the water, an emergency and life-threatening procedure. Some complied and others did not, and those that did not quickly took off and flew to other ships to refuel. One that complied, Captain Dave Kendall, was fished out of the sea dripping wet and scrambled on board a helicopter piloted by Larry Stadoulis in order to continue making evacuations all day. Together, Kendall and Stadoulis may have operated the last helicopter out of Vietnam and landed aboard the USS Blue Ridge in the dark and on fumes. The Air America helicopters that were saved were taken to the Philippines. The crews were dropped unceremoniously in Hong Kong. An Air America representative greeted the crews, gave them tickets to their homes of record, and told them to go home. Just as in Laos, the Air America experience in Vietnam was over abruptly. Again, there were no victory parties, no accolades, and no fanfare. This is key here. Pay attention. Air America was a U.S. government-owned corporation, and the employees were government employees. Let me read that again to you as it sinks in. Air America was a U.S. government-owned corporation, and the employees were government employees. Few at the time knew the real owner. Within 1 year, Air America was dissolved. Asia Company Ltd. was sold to E-Systems, and the profit from the sale was returned to the U.S. Treasury. The employees who had tenure with a government-owned corporation were denied benefits. If you are a fan of the CIA, brace yourself, because this next line may shatter that opinion. The CIA, which despite frequent reports did not own the company, stated in writing to the Secretary of the U.S. Air Force that Air America employees conducted military activity without authority and jurisdiction, were overpaid, and deserved nothing more than what they had received as employees working with the company. The USAF JAO wrote to the Secretary of the Air Force that Air America employees were brave souls but were unprivileged belligerents, which was a kinder description of unlawful combatants, or mercenaries who acted militarily as volunteers but without authority and jurisdiction. It is a sad commentary on a group that deserved better. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Edward Merrick may have said it best in his article titled "The Alamo in Laos." He stated this, I quote, Air America people were sent home in 1975, and probably because of all the politics and secrecy surrounding it, Air America people were not received with much, if any, fanfare. As a U.S. Air Force veteran of the Indochina War, whose unit was involved in electronic reconnaissance, mostly over Laos, I can tell you that the term Air America has always brought out the haters, I will call them, in the journalism and book writing businesses. My guess is that none of them really understood the service, sacrifices, loyalty, and valor with which those men flew, and more important, did not understand that they did what they did for their country and its allies in that war. I personally tap my hat to them. Colonel Merrick, I agree 100%. I also personally tip my hat to all the Air America personnel and for the job that they did for their country. It is a shame that they don't get the recognition and gratitude they deserve. Thank you, Hollywood producers, for that. Now you know the story of Air America, what it's done for its country, and why it is in the situation it is, due to the fact our government was so concerned with plausible deniability. In other words, trying to avoid the web of lies the government produced when they were trying to hide what they were doing in Southeast Asia. Of course, it is so easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, But that's behind us. What is in front of us is the job to get the equity that these Air America personnel deserve. You're going to hear more about that in the next episode, where Maureen Ebersol is going to tell us all about it. Thank you for listening to this episode, and make sure you don't miss the next one that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?